Yes, this is from my daughter Rachel. I first met Emrys more than 25 years ago when I was an eager but disorganized college freshman who had been enjoying haphazard romps through the philosophy section of the library. Through Emrys's classes, of which I took as many as I could, I learned about a philosophy which was both more rigorous and infinitely more human than solitary rambles with dusty books. In every class, through keen questions and prompts and limitless good humor, Emrys fostered discussion and engagement in a way which now, as a professor myself, I recognize to be truly exceptional. Everyone was included, every viewpoint given space, and yet Emrys maintained focus. I remember once when a classmate answered Emrys's question by silently leaving the classroom and returning with a potted spider plant, which he ceremoniously placed before Emrys, saying, "This would be the Buddha's reply." With a slight smile, but no hint of irony, Emrys said, "Could you elaborate on that?" Emrys cares deeply and genuinely about his students as human beings. I have many fond memories of classes held outdoors or over coffee, and of end-of-semester gatherings at Emrys and Vicky's house. Although I went into mathematics and physics instead of philosophy, I learned from Emrys to think of science from a cultural perspective as a human endeavor. Emrys gave me a copy of Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, a book still on my shelf today, and discussed its content with me. He taught me to think of academic papers as stories intended for a reader and thus requiring a narrative arc. Perhaps more importantly, Emrys introduced me to Richard Rorty's essay, Trotsky and the Wild Orchids, a meditation on how to reconcile aesthetically motivated intellectual pursuits with the moral impulse to act for the benefit of fellow humans. As I navigated my career path, I found in Emrys's generous and wise example as a teacher-scholar the answer to my own Trotsky and the Wild Orchids problem. I aspire to emulate both his intellectual commitment and his dedication to his students. Over the years since my graduation, I am glad and fortunate to have maintained touch with Emrys and Vicky as dear friends. I wish Emrys, a gardener and a nurturer of plants, both literal and metaphorical, fields and fields of wild orchids, in the knowledge that the seeds of thought and questioning which he helped all his students to plant continue bearing fruit every season.
And now we hear from Beth Ann Dobie, who will read the message to Emrys from his former colleague, Tom Pearson.
Emrys. So this is from Tom Peterson. Emrys, you are the last of my colleagues to retire from the Division of Human Studies and one of the most cherished. As my colleague, I had the opportunity to be in a high-level intellectual seminar whenever I decided to drop into your office, which I did frequently when we both had offices in the basement of Kanakadia Hall. Over my 36th career in the Division of Human Studies, I had the opportunity to be part of 2 NEH Summer Institutes and 1 NEH Summer Seminar, but I was never more intellectually challenged than during these visits to your office. You always showed an interest in the issues I was thinking about, such as how possession in Haitian voodoo and Balinese masking raise questions about the nature of consciousness. Far better, you forced me to think more deeply about these issues. You also challenged me to think about the issues you were writing about, frugality in the good life, gossiping as important to cultural cohesion, and the toleration of rudeness as part of truth-telling. You raised one issue that still haunts me. What are the benefits and liabilities of organizing society around egalitarian rather than hierarchical principles? Of course, we also gossiped about the division or the liberal arts college. I was assured by you that we were being virtuous in doing so. And I remember some of your most strongly held convictions. you assured me, for example, that you would never, under any circumstances, agree to becoming the chair of human studies. Having just served as chair for 7 years, I tried to reinforce this conviction, telling you that it felt like being nibbled to death by ducks. So I was quite surprised when I learned that you had become chair. So much for deeply held convictions. But I also knew that the division had made a great choice. As Saint Benedict said, never choose anyone as abbot who seeks the job. Emrys, you always reminded us that teaching students to think critically was more important than conveying facts, which they would often forget shortly after a course was over. And your scholarship is significant for the same reason. It encourages us to reconsider our conclusions and rethink our prejudices. Thank you, Emrys, for being a teacher to me and others in the Division of Human Studies. As one of my most treasured colleagues, I wish you well in your retirement.
We will now hear from Bob Stein, Dean of Liberal Arts and Sciences.
It's difficult to write a tribute to Emrys because he's the person we all go to when we need tributes written. No one writes a more insightful or funnier encomium than Emrys. In fact, I thought about asking Emrys to write this tribute for me to read. I'm sure he would have come up with something more entertaining than I have. But Emrys' style also includes slipping in jibes. For example, when he praised Gary Ostrauer, he noted that he always beats Ostrauer in golf. So I thought he might make me the object of those jibes if I abdicated my responsibility. So as a matter of self-defense, I'm going to say a few words about Emrys. More than once over the last 5 to 10 years, as longstanding members of the faculty have retired, I've struggled to imagine what Alfred University was going to be like without them. I'm certainly having that same difficulty today. Although we've celebrated a number of milestones, such as his last chairs meeting, his final faculty meeting, and his last day of teaching, I don't really believe that he won't show up ready to teach in the fall. As some of you heard me say at the end of our last CLIS faculty meeting, right after Beth Ann's lovely remarks about Emrys, whenever President Zupan talks about the 3 pillars of our strategic plan, mentorship, intersections, inclusivity, I think we really have a 4th, Emrys. And just like Mallory, I'm in denial that we will no longer have his wise counsel at faculty meetings or his humor during P&T season. And I'm in a downright panic over the fact that CLAS is losing its most reliable mock class teacher in the humanities, right as admissions wants to run more of those. A bigger reason I'm in denial is that Emrys is the kind of person I imagined I would be colleagues with when I went into academics. In fact, he's the kind of academic I would have wanted to be had I had the brains and the accent. Actually, I'm not really sure if it's brains and accent or if it's really just the accent. I tried to test this empirically by listening to an audio version of his book, The Wisdom of Frugality, Why Less is More, More or Less, which is one of the best titles ever. No question about it. The book sounded really smart, even with a different reader. But that reader also had an accent, so I can't run. No, what I mean to say is that Emrys is a liberal educator and he's liberally educated. We tell students that a liberal education means that we are trying to teach the whole person. And there are few better models than Emrys of someone who has cultivated all aspects of himself. His analytical side and his creative side, which includes writing plays like See No Weevil for the Wee Playhouse, his artistic self and his athletic self. We've already heard he's a great golfer, and I think he's probably the 3rd best squash player on campus. His analytical side, I've already referenced, but see also his 3 quarts daily contributions. You'd have to read 3 quarts daily for a month to get through all of Emrys's contributions. Because his interests are so wide-ranging, Emrys has a stance on a startling range of topics. You'd be hard-pressed to find a subject upon which Emrys does not have a stance. And I say stance advisedly because I'm not saying he has opinions about everything. That would be selling him short. He has arguments, carefully thought through, on most issues or topics. Who better than Emrys passes the central test of a liberal education? Do you want to go have a beer with him? Emrys doesn't just hoard his liberal education either. He shares it, and he inspires others to appreciate it. He doesn't just hold himself up and write. And given his award-winning teaching and his scholarly output, Emrys really could have chosen that path. But Emrys is philosophically committed to community, and so he lives that philosophy by being an exemplary member of a community. As you all know, he's been a faculty senator, Senate president, a stalwart of Middle States committees, a Phi Beta Kappa president. But the most obvious example of his dedication is the Bergen Forum. The most obvious example of his liberal education is his dedication to the Bergen Forum. Emrys co-organized this remarkable institution for 2 decades, with Bill DeBrell for many years, and more recently with John D'Angelo. For me, the Bergen Forum is the heart of co-curricular intellectual life at Alfred. It brings together scholars of every field and celebrates both an introspective and an active approach to learning. By doing so, it is a weekly reminder to everyone on campus that liberal education is about connecting with oneself and with others. I would say it is our duty to honor Emerson Bill's legacy here by supporting the Bergen Forum. Emrys shares his education in his scholarship too. His earlier work demonstrated that he can produce typical philosophical works on relativism or Kant, but what he's more interested in doing is applying philosophical modes of thinking to people's everyday lives. You can hear in his wisdom of frugality discussion of the value of individuals behaving in environmentally conscious ways that he sees everyday life not as trivial, but as the glue that holds society together and also the ultimate source of movements that can change society. Somehow he applies all this analytical approach to things like rudeness and gossip in ways that are just really fun to read. Emrys has this great image in his chapter on gossip in Virtues of Our Vices, where he says he's going to construct a sort of sieve formed with generally accepted moral principles, which can serve to filter out others that are clearly objectionable views or clearly acceptable views. Once all these clear cases have been dispensed with, he then proceeds to provide his nuanced analysis of the remaining controversial kinds of talk. I just love the image that talking to Emrys is like talking to a sieve. But it is true, because Emrys's sieve is really just his capacity for nuance. And what is more liberally educated than that? Emrys, we're going to miss you like you wouldn't believe, so we're counting on you to continue to be an integral part of this intellectual community, just without the grading.
Thank you, Bob. We will now hear from Emrys's wife, Vicki Westcott.
Going to be a step down, but okay. So one of the things that friends and family know about Emrys is that he has a wide range of interests and projects, and when he is into something, he is really into something. And he is not shy about sharing his enthusiasms. Some of you may remember when Emrys's interest in frugality combined with his interest in gardening, for example, and he had a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a rotating composter that he had made from a garbage can and some repurposed lumber. And that very quickly revealed itself to be a complete dud. But when he would routinely invite dinner guests into the basement to visit the composting works. In a tastier vein, there was a baking period that has resulted in years of excellent pies, cakes, bread, and of course, Welsh cakes, which I imagine all of you have tried. A gardening phase has regularly produced enough potatoes to last us till March. And fortunately, he has a 1940s book on 99 ways to cook potatoes. And a fitness phase led to years of squash games with his chief competitor, Alan, and a lifelong gym habit. Something you may not know about Emrys is that when I first met him, he was not particularly frugal or good with money. Large portions of the wages from his first job as a bus conductor went into slot machines in the company canteen, and the rest to a 3-wheeled vehicle that lost a wheel on its first trip back. As students, we got to know each other well because he got to the end of the academic year and had money left over from his scholarship. And rather than saving it for the next year, he blew it all in a month-long binge on going out to dinner, movies, bars, etc. with me. Frugality was a project that came much later when he found himself the father of 2 small children on a graduate school income. I remember arriving home to him excitedly showing me a video of how to cut your child's hair and producing an accounting of the amount of money that could be saved if we all cut each other's hair. Tens of thousands, enough to retire on. Emrys's interests and accompanying enthusiasm and the diligence with which he pursues them spill over into every aspect of his life. Constants are his curiosity, voracious reading habits, and desire to share his thoughts and knowledge with others. In daily life at home, in the classroom with his students, in conversation with his friends and colleagues, and in his many writing and speaking projects. Articles in scholarly publications, 3 Quarks Daily, books that have been translated into multiple languages, podcasts and radio shows, plays performed at We Playhouse, poems and songs delivered at family occasions, and continuous correspondence with old friends. He had the good fortune to have employment that suited so well what he does quite naturally and loves best, and I have no doubt that he will continue to find interests and explore them thoroughly in retirement. I always look forward to hearing whatever new questions you're thinking of,
Thank you, everyone. So I really wasn't kidding when I said that we were inundated with messages from people who wanted to be part of this. So for that reason, I want to share with us a small number of video messages from well-wishers who couldn't be here today. So we are going to hear from some short messages from family, from friends, and then right at the end, from some people who frankly are neither family nor friends. This will also be the public debut of my own personal video editing skills. So let's all see how that goes. I'm sort of guessing the volume, so we may adjust. Now, some of these messages are quite short, so let's, as a group, let's all definitely really focus.
One. You can come and see us a bit more often.
This is going to be long.
Hello, DHS and friends of Emrys. I'm going to be reading my comment because otherwise I'll likely forget to say things that I want to include, so you'll forgive me for that. If my math is right, Emrys has taught at AU for about 29 years, and he's enjoyed every minute of it, which most of you know is a lie, because no sane faculty member is going to enjoy every minute. You have to go to faculty meetings, do assessment, read student papers, and so forth. Nevertheless, for the most part, he's enjoyed it. One of the things we faculty do is to write tons of letters of recommendation. And think about the letters of recommendation that we read when we have faculty who are applying for our positions. They're going to tell us about how wonderful this graduate student is and how wonderfully he will fit into our department, and that he's one of Public University's top 25 students in the last 25 years. And he'll make a cooperative and a wonderful member of the division. And I'm pleased to report that those good things written about Emrys turned out to be true. I like to sometimes brag that I didn't inflate grades when I was teaching at AU. Well, in writing about Emrys, I'm not going to inflate a grade. The simple fact of the matter is that Emrys has been one of the two most productive scholars outside of the engineering field who has taught at Alfred University for the last quarter of a century, and maybe for the last, well, 100 and what, since 1836, when AU was founded. Because he is not applying for a job here, you've probably not seen a list of his publications. Had you read some of what's on that list, you'd marvel, not at the number of his publications, but the quality of his effort. And that quality is reflective not only of the truth of what he writes, okay, truth with a lowercase t, but with the skill with which he constructs philosophical arguments. Perhaps my admiration for Emrys relates to the degree to which he is that is considerably, is a public intellectual, not just a conventional faculty member. He has spoken to outside groups. He's appeared on C-SPAN's Afterwards for a 2-hour discussion with Michelle Singletary of the Washington Post. He and I used to lecture in our Western Civilization course, and I know the Western intellectual tradition pretty well, and yet I was always popping into his office to clarify issues related to some of the great thinkers of the past half millennium, such as Nietzsche and Marx, and of course, Beth Ann Tobey. Now, Emrys made me a better historian and a more reflective person. He has imparted a degree of rigor to the thinking of countless students, which is a reflection of the rigor of his own thought. You need not read his books to witness this rigor. Just read any half dozen of his articles. Most of them are fairly short, that appear from 3 Quarks Daily or in Philosophy Now. And what do I discover after all of this work? And I discover that he is a philosopher who is absolutely committed, not only to what we loosely describe as the life of the mind, but one who is committed to a kind of intellectual generosity, to not hurting people. Now look, he's not a pacifist, but he's close, I think. He respects the ideas of others, for the most part, and has a John Stuart Millian kind of commitment to intellectual and academic freedom, and to a belief that we should take nothing for granted. Here's a bit of evidence of what I've just said. Emrys is a Marxist, but I have never met a Marxist more willing to critique the fundamental tenets of Marx than he, or to respect the accomplishments of modern capitalism. He's an atheist, but I have never heard him condescendingly demean those who are believers. He once appeared in one of my classes to debate a fundamentalist minister. The class was composed of about 8 students who declared themselves as believers, 7 students who declared themselves as atheists. I thought that Emrys's arguments were devastating, and yet one should note in honesty that at the end of the class we took another poll and we had 8 students who were believers and 7 who were atheists. Let me put it more directly. Emrys is one of the least doctrinaire intellectuals who I have ever met. Whether he is assessing the Stoics or Heidegger or John Stuart Mill, I find his insights fresh and exciting. He's written about topics as varied as tipping in restaurants to the morality of black humor. He has revised my own rather hardline approach to student plagiarism, and I recommend that you read a play that he wrote that appeared in 2006 in the Chronicle of Higher Education about this subject. He has certainly influenced my own doctrinaire assessment of frugality in a book that includes a helpful list of about 30 synonyms for frugality that nudge us to realize that it's more than simply being cheap. It's a complicated, a nuanced subject, a challenging subject, and nor does he neglect to mention that although most philosophers since the Stoics have praised frugality, many in fact do not practice it themselves. Nor is Emrys an advice giver. He uncovers for us the assumptions too often unexamined that help us to understand why we act as we do and the consequences of our conventions. Let me give you another example. Should we all practice frugality? If we did, says Emrys, our economy would likely slide into a deep depression. And if we all practice frugality, we deprive ourselves of some of the architectural wonders that contribute to a very un-Thoreauian-like happiness. No Taj Mahal, no Palace of Versailles, no renovated Canacadea Hall. He may be a public intellectual, but he is quintessentially an insightful and challenging teacher. He long had open office hours downtown for students where his students could toss around ideas. He has taught a wide range of courses at AU, including things like biomedical ethics, existentialism, Nietzsche, even typewritery, which was kind of a spin-off from his book. His teaching evaluations are uniformly positive, with especially high marks in areas such as encouraging discussion and philosophical range. He connects academic philosophy to the everyday lives of his students, and he uses these ideas to enliven the many, many conversations that he and I, have had over the decades. Need I add that at the core of his concerns is the question of morality, which is where he started off as a philosopher when he produced a dissertation about cognitive relativism and its pragmatist core. I find Emrys's commitment to the philosophical underpinnings of virtues like generosity and kindness and mutual respect to be hugely important during a period when the ripples coming out of Washington, D.C., Donald Trump's Washington, are making us smaller and less kind than at any point since the Gilded Age. Finally, Emrys, in both written work and his conversation, exhibits an outstanding sense of humor. I was reading his book about gossip and other virtues on a flight from San Francisco to Chicago a number of years ago, and I was laughing out loud to the point where neighboring passengers wanted to know what I was reading. Well, I told them it was a book of philosophy. That sentence left them speechless. That's maybe what I should be at this point. I want to congratulate him. If congratulations over retirement is ever the right word, I wish you a great, great future. Thank you. This statement comes from Stuart Campbell, who was a member of the division, historian of Europe at the time that Emrys was hired. And Stuart says the following: "It's hard to believe that he's about to retire. He was the last person we hired, and he was just a kid. Before I stepped down," he says, "from the crew of the starship DHS. At the time, I was struck by the wide-ranging, shrewd, and puckish intelligence that came through with Emrys. Events have eventually proved my hunch correct. His good-natured and quirky affirmation of lecture, gossip, and even idleness inevitably brings forth a smile. There also is his ability to gently prod people to recognize and to receive, if you will, the commonplace. Finally, I'm having trouble reading this here, okay. I expect that he's been an excellent chair. A collection of high-minded folk given to squabbling. The DHS always needed someone to preside who was thoroughly unflappable. Give him my best and enjoy the celebration." That's from Stuart Campbell.
Hi Emrys, Jamie Grimes here. Great to hear about your support for the Spy Rights in New York State. On behalf of everyone at the club, I'd like to wish you a very happy retirement.
Hi Emrys, Paul Cook here, Chesterfield Football Club. Just thanking you for all your support over the year for the Spy Rights. I'm just wishing you really well in New York State in your retirement. Best of luck.
Thank you, everyone. As I said, many people who wanted to wish Emrys well. The last thing that is to be done is for me to introduce Andrew Kless, who will dedicate the picture you see here to Emrys.
We prefer you do not leave, and that's why we have this photo to remind us of the betrayal of you leaving. But if you must, we dedicate this photo, the Division of Human Studies, for all of your service to the university, to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences to Division of Human Studies into the philosophy program. So thank you, Emrys. It'll be Yeah, I know. So Emrys said this is one of the most awkward things in the world, getting his picture taken for this photo. So you can't learn it. Thank you, Emrys.
I'll say a few words. Just a few words. As Gary always begins, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. I'll say this. When I came to Alfred, 1996, the Division of Human Studies was a very sort of powerful division with, as you can see, very, very big characters and very distinguished teachers and scholars. And I was pretty proud to join that division. I was also very pleased that I wasn't just joining a philosophy department. It was a wide-ranging religious studies, history, philosophy, and fine art at the time. And that, I think, really helped me to broaden, to not be too narrow, not be a specialist scholar. And so that's why I'm very grateful to Alfred University, very grateful to the college, very grateful to the division, because while academics, in case some of the students might not know this, academics quite like to complain. And one of the things we complain about, of course, is, we complain about ourselves, the university, everything. But I do feel very grateful, because I feel the university has enabled me to very much do just what I wanted to do, which was teach and write and read and explore. Sometimes I've given talks to alumni or to trustees or trustees' spouses about what I do at Alfred and why I like doing it. And often I'll just say, well, my job, what I'm paid to do, is read good books and discuss them with interesting young people. It's nice work if you can get it. And that's, honestly what I think about the work I do. The last thing I'll say is that the Division of Human Studies was obviously a very important part of my life. And I'm very grateful to all the great people in the past, Stuart Campbell, Tom Peterson, Bill Cassidy, Linda Mitchell, Bill DeBrell, Van Dobie, of course. I'm forgetting someone, John Gilmore, Vicky Eckler, and those people. But I'm really happy as well that the current Division of Human Studies is in really good hands. And that's a sign of that is just the remarkable increase in enrollment we've had recently in history and philosophy, which is a real tribute to the people who are in charge of human studies now. So I'm really happy about leaving all the work to them.
Thank you, everyone. Please enjoy food and wine and everything else. Shortly there will be cake. But that does it for the speeches. Let's give one last round of applause to Emrys.